All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone, this morning or this evening, as the case may be around the world. My name is Jack Zampolin, and today with me I have JK from Stakefish. But first, let me just give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Our primary sponsor is Sommelier Finance. This is the company that I work for. We're making tooling for liquidity providers on Uniswap. Currently, it's only for V2, but we've got a very exciting product coming out for the folks that are interested in V3, and we'll have much more on that next week. And in fact, next week, I have Zucky Munyon on the show to chat Uniswap V3 liquidity provision. So lots of exciting things happening at Sommelier Finance. Go give it a check out. Our other sponsor today, as always, is OmniFlix Media. OmniFlix Media is a network for content creation and distribution built on top of a Cosmos SDK blockchain. If you'd like to learn more, go to omniflix.network. There's a great team there. They've got some great software, and they have contributed all throughout the Cosmos network at a number of different layers of the stack. And thank you very much, Sisla, for, again, being a wonderful production editor. So JK, good morning, or good evening, I guess, as the case may be, over there in Korea. Thank you very much for joining us. I know it's late.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me here, Jack. It's wonderful to be here to talk about Validator stuff, anything that interesting, I guess, coming up. Just a short intro of myself. I'm JK. I lead strategy and operations at Stakefish. Stakefish is one of the earliest Cosmos Hub validators. We've been here since Genesis. I think we're like the 5th largest one right now on the Cosmos Hub.
Yeah, I remember doing those initial test nets with you guys, and it was wild back then. So JK, do you mind telling the audience just a little bit more about your background? Like how did you get into proof of stake validation? This is such a random field.
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess I would have to talk about our roots and our founder a bit. Our founder is Wang Chun, and he co-founded F2 Pool, which is one of the biggest mining pools and oldest running mining pools to date, in 2013. And he realized the importance of having really good infrastructure for blockchain projects. He believed that blockchain, of course, is the future. Decentralization is the future, but there's a lot of experiments. There's a lot of building that needs to happen before that future is realized. Yeah. To make sure that developers are able to build on blockchains, that users are able to use them, without having to worry about attacks or about blockchains going down, you need really strong infrastructure. So that's how he came to build up, mining pools, and then he saw proof of stake coming up, and it just made sense that we also then spin up validators, because validators are the core proponents that support the networks. As we see on Cosmos Hub, it's been running, very, very strongly for 2 years now, and it's really thanks to all the validators there. And so we're very happy to be in this space to provide that hardened infrastructure layer, and we're really happy to have strong peers as well.
Yeah, so I think that's a great segue. You guys validate on a lot of different proof of stake networks, and I've got some questions about some of the different ones. So my first one is, what's the most maintenance? Like, which one do you end up futzing with the most?
Yeah, so I want to preface this by saying that this does not mean the network is weak. It does not mean people shouldn't take this and run away and try to misunderstand what I'm trying to say here. But the one where we experienced the most maintenance at one point was Solana, and I just say this because Solana is a very highly performant blockchain. That they've built this for exactly to have high TPS. And as a result, it's very complex. A lot of you need really strong hardware to be running a Solana. And so there was one point where we had to butt heads a lot, and we had to put in a lot of engineering power just to make sure that we have something stable up there.
Yeah, I see Anatoly tweeting, "Hey, validators, time to upgrade again," and I know what that means. But that's I will say for the Solana team, they've been extremely upfront about that, and I think pretty much every testnet or mainnet they've ever done, they've said, "Hey, this could be a little wild, and you're going to need to run a lot of hardware." So just a warning, which is cool. Yeah. So what like you guys are adding proof of stake networks all the time. What's your most recent network that you guys have added support for?
I believe the most recent one might be Sentinel.
Oh, nice.
A Cosmos SDK based, a DVPN project. And really, our support for there came about because we have a few really passionate team members who
Got
have
it.
been telling me all about Sentinel consistently. And then, we decided like, yeah, now's the time to really pull the gun and then, jump on Sentinel as a validator. And we're really happy to be on there.
Yeah, I am also running on Sentinel. One thing that I found with the Cosmos chains is like spinning up additional Cosmos chains, like pretty easy once you've done one. Is that kind of the same experience that you guys have over at Polkadot? I noticed a couple of Polkadot-based chains that you guys are validating on.
Yes, I would say so. Definitely. Any blockchain, I mean, any parachain that's built using Substrate, it's relatively easier. It's just the first go that's really difficult, and then afterwards, the kinks, like what works and what doesn't. So it becomes a lot easier on the second and the third one. So I'd say from a validator perspective, like running Cosmos SDK chains and Substrate chains are similarly easy at this point.
Yeah. Well, I think that what is potentially more difficult is running the ETH2 validators. You can only throw, I think, 32 ETH on a given key, so you end up needing to parallelize quite a bit and spin up quite a few of them. How are you guys managing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely a lot more challenging, I'd say, because like we need to also monitor performance. I can't go into too many details about how exactly we're managing to parallelly spin up these validators, just because our head of infrastructure is definitely going to kill me at that point.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but I would say it's definitely challenging. That's why we really try to experiment a lot on the testnet. And we've been trying to optimize on the testnet and then use those optimization and learning to then apply to the mainnet. And so we've been trying to really utilize the testnet. We've been experimenting on the testnet way before the mainnet, the beacon chain launched, the mainnet launched, and we're trying to really focus, reiterate on this practice a lot more right now.
Interesting. What are the hardware requirements for each of the nodes on the ETH2 validator set?
Again, I'm not going to be the right person to talk about the technical aspects of it, but it's not really it's not too hard. Like the Ethereum, Ethereum 2.0 has been coded in such a way that anyone could run validator nodes, even using their home PCs, laptops, and they really did a great job on that front. We do see awesome. A lot of stories of people just running on their laptops or just at home without needing to purchase additional hardware like GPUs, if you had to mine, for example, right?
Solana too. You need GPUs for Solana, don't you?
Yes, you need quite beefy servers, and you definitely need GPUs for Solana.
So where do you guys run all your infrastructure? Do you guys have a data center or two out there?
So we do have a data center. We do have a bare metal, but we primarily use cloud. Yeah. Just because none of the networks have really pushed us to the edge where we absolutely need to use a bare metal or customize the servers to that point. I believe the last time we had to absolutely use our bare metal was with EOS. EOS's validator requirements were actually much beefier than Solana's. So
interesting.
So we needed to use bare metal for EOS.
That is really interesting. I was unaware of that. I don't know if I've ever talked to anyone who's validated on EOS. That's kind of wild. As somebody who also runs cloud validation services myself, it is much easier to spin up full nodes and centuries in the cloud. And, I know that there's a number of folks who also peer their cloud to their private data center and then run some of the key signing services in the data center. Is that an architecture that you guys run too?
Again, I won't be able to disclose that much.
Yeah, totally.
But
Absolutely understand. Yeah.
but I will say that we did find like cloud to be extremely helpful, especially when especially when choosing regions, right?
Yeah.
There are cases where peers are like sometimes we're like one of the first few validators on a network, and there might not be enough peers in some regions, and we definitely be falling behind on the network. And it really helps if we have or utilize cloud regions of various regions just to make sure that we're staying with the other validators when first bootstrapping the network.
Yeah, being able to deploy all over the world is just a huge, huge benefit. And, the sort of fault tolerance that comes with that too. I think for a lot of my networks, I try to run US East, US Central, and US West. So, it'd be very hard to knock out. And also, I will note, JK might not want to talk about validator setups for security reasons as well, which is very legitimate. These are secure services that we run, and disclosing too much about the internal infrastructure potentially opens attack vectors. So absolutely get that, JK. With ETH2 in staking, I think one of the hottest topics recently has been Lido and the growth there in sort of staking derivatives. Terra, which is I think another network that you guys validate on, also working with Lido on staking derivatives. That's going to be a really exciting thing that's going to hit our space and going to kind of change this validation game that we've been playing for a little while. Are you guys involved in staking derivatives at all?
Yeah. So just to set the record straight, we're not a validator on Terra.
Oh, you're
quite
not?
surprisingly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Well,
And then, we've been involved with Lido from its beginning. We were one of the first 5 validators to be on Lido and running Ethereum validators that went into sort of the Lido staking derivative design. We're huge fans of this, and we've been seeing we definitely did expect this to fully happen even when first Cosmos came about, and there were discussions during the early days of Cosmos around even the potential of staking derivatives.
we'll get there. It's on the roadmap this year. There's a couple of refactors we need to do, but we're gonna get there.
Yeah. I do want to. There's a ton of staking derivative projects out there already in the but there's a really one strong. There's a really I'll go through the logic of this, but there's a reason why we joined Lido specifically, and it's because Lido is created by the team at P2P, which are who are validators themselves. And so they have a very keen understanding of what it takes to validate on a network, and then also on top of that to create a product out of it. Now, most of these staking derivative projects that came before Lido, or even launching today alongside Lido as a competitor, the thing that they overlook and just don't pay too much attention to is trying to bootstrap the supply side, meaning the validator side. They think, oh, we'll just create a design mechanism, and maybe we'll just run the validator ourselves, or validators are naturally just going to join whatever mechanism we create. Well, it really doesn't work that way. You need to really handhold, I think, the validators. You need to talk with validators from the very get-go to see if they're willing to join your staking derivative design, and Lido, this is something that they did very well from day one. They understood that they needed to get a trusted, sort of strong set of validators. And so when they told us Chorus One, Certus One staking facilities will be there along with, P2P, that's when we knew they understand the problem here very clearly. And we'd have no problem joining this wonderful group of validators.
I didn't realize that was those were all the projects that were primarily involved in Lido. That's really funny, and that's cool.
Yeah, because we know all of each other. They're all Cosmos validators as well. And we've built a long history of trust. We know that each of us can be held accountable. No one has ever been slashed. These are very important factors if we're going to work together. Because if we're the ones holding holding the protocol, and others get slashed, we don't want to be in that awkward situation. So we were very comfortable sending our sign of approval, signaling that Lido is gets it. gets how to create staking derivatives.
I mean, that is really interesting because, we sit there and, you look at these uptime dashboards and you can see when people go down on these networks, and it's pretty obvious. And, you can see the network operators who are very, very competent, and through over the years at this point, where we've all got multiple year-long records. Very little downtime, no slashing events, and giving back to the community. And every single one of those validators that you mentioned kind of fits those criteria. That's great to hear that Lido has such a strong set there. I've also heard that they're moving over to Terra. What other plans do you guys have with Lido coming up here?
Yeah, so I think that's also a natural segue into why another point on why we joined Lido, and it's because of the demand bootstrapping. A staking derivative is not powerful on its own. Really, the end goal of staking derivative would be that it's sort of used as like a risk-free sort of interest, yield, risk-free yield generating sort of bond type of asset that can be locked in and used in other DeFi protocols. Imagine your collateral on ETH in Maker is now like earning interest on ETH. Well, how wonderful would that be? Like I call that like productive collateral. You want to have these situations. And so to get there, you need to really be well connected with the DeFi folks. You need to understand how to implement your staking derivative in these DeFi protocols. And this is where I give a lot of credit to Lido's CTO Vasily. Who's very well connected in the DeFi space because he's already made a name for himself in that area. So from the get-go, he knew the Curve folks. So that's how like the staked ETH and the ETH pool was created in Curve. So like all these connections, this keen understanding of how to bootstrap the demand side was, I think, also very key. And I knew Vasily, I knew he was going to be able to do this, so it gave us a lot of confidence. And then to go back to your actual question. So in terms of next steps, Course One just announced today, like an hour ago, that they were planning to build Stake Solana to come on Lido. So, so the ambition of Lido.
That's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about Solana. Well, the conversation consisted of it. So you'll see a lot of these iterations coming to Lido because each of the validators, like we're all on different networks. So you'll see slowly each of us delivering these sort of stuff. Or, maybe it might be another totally different team. But it's going to be very easy to bootstrap because we all run validators in most of these major proof-of-stake networks.
That's really cool. Yeah, the last time that I worked closely with Vasily was Game of Zones. And he was running a hacked version of my relayer. And we went back and forth quite a bit about that, and we haven't really caught up since then. That's cool. I did not realize that he was Lido. That is wild. It really cool. So one thing that you mentioned prior to the call that I did not know you were working on, which is sort of very close to this Lido thing, is the idea of a validator cooperative. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about that and sort of what that would look like?
Yeah, sure thing. So the Validator Cooperative, like we don't have a set name for it. Sometimes we call it Validator Forum, but is primarily led by our team member Daniel Huang. He's the one who's been like primarily leading this along with a few other people. Like I think Gavin from Figment is also very heavily involved with him on trying to get this up and running. The idea is there's a ton of validators now in the space, and we all validate on very different networks. But it's very, very difficult to sort of stay up to date on each of these protocols. We're all individually managing it relatively well, but I'd say there might be a better way to do this. What if all the protocols what if all the validators got together and shared our resources to ping each other about like updates on upgrades that need to happen, key upgrades, or if there's any key updates to how the protocol will evolve, maybe we could just share that information with each other. The idea is to bring these sort of validator level, very critical information to this validator cooperative. Now that's just step one, because then afterwards, this could keep evolving to where now validators can discuss on governance proposals, but also we could, help sort of leverage our shared, power to ask protocols to abide by certain good best practices. This is like there's some certain best practices that are arising for protocols to to do, and we'd love to share this, but one validator saying this is not powerful enough. But if the cooperative or whatever, over the forum, whatever the name would be, has enough validators in them, and we all sort of tell these protocols to abide by some of these best practices altogether, the protocols will have to listen to us at that point. And this is very key.
Yeah, what are some of those best practices in your mind that you're seeing out there sort of emerging?
Yeah, like as an example, one that really comes to mind is around like critical upgrades. Critical upgrades sometimes are just not communicated very well. Sometimes it's just like through Telegram. Sometimes they would have a registry of each of the validators sort of email addresses and start sending messages out. It's all over the place, and it's impossible to track these. I know everyone is trying their best, but there's definitely certain teams that have come up with a much better way. I think this is where I give credit to, I think, Near, who does this very, very well, where they send emails with color-coded emails about like, what is a critical sort of upgrade that needs to happen or not. And then it helps us internally to escalate this or not, and to like try to prioritize very well as well, try to prioritize our task as well. So you could imagine that once there's enough validators sort of voicing this opinion altogether, maybe it's not specifically this certain best practice, but we could discuss that, right? If we have that forum where we could discuss what are the best practices that we want to ask the protocols to abide by. And if we all together sort of bring this to protocols, we believe we can then sway protocols to, become better and, better communicate with us, and then also to, better evolve, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that this idea that protocols are beholden to validators is like very, very true. I mean, we like as validators, we run these networks, and often you see protocols just pushing updates and, expecting people to jump to. And it's, you guys are running on like 20 different networks, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm only running on 4. But obviously I do other things, and it's just hard to it gets really, really hard to keep up. And what's funny too is like I have a lot of empathy from the protocol side, because I worked on the security team at Cosmos for a while, and we've done a few of those. So like JK is talking about like some protocols like reaching out to you via Telegram. When we were doing that, we were like, okay, how do we keep this upgrade secret and only tell the people that need to know? And we tried to just like, we all sat in a room and we're like, okay, let's go through the validator set, and like everyone raised their hand if you know how to get in touch with somebody. And it's like, okay, Dokia, all right, you over there, go get that one. Stakefish, you got that one. And then like, we all just kind of split up, everyone went and got somebody, and like, definitely not the best way to do that. But it is a way to do that. And, I think that developing common ways to do these security critical updates is, I think, one thing that a validator cooperative would be excellent for, because traditional big tech and, the InfoSec community have developed some standard ways to do responsible disclosure and other things like that. And, we need to adapt those practices for these systems that we run. And we're sort of at the beginning stages of that. And, one of the things that I've seen over and over again in blockchain is like, we want to reinvent something, and then we end up looking at the way that we've done it in tech in the past. We're like, yeah, that one worked pretty well. Like all these reinvention ideas that we had, like maybe not the best. But I do think that especially around security critical updates, because there are so many parties that need to be contacted for responsible disclosure, this is an area where we really need to innovate. And I think that at Cosmos and Tendermint, we did innovate on that for a little while. And we still kind of are, but now we have this problem where a security critical update in the Cosmos SDK or Tendermint touches 50 projects.
Oh yeah.
Which is wild. So yeah, and I think that having a validator cooperative to sort of counterbalance that, because if the team over at Tendermint finds a security critical update, JK, you would be responsible for updating like 5 validators, and those updates are likely going to come through very different channels, each with its own protocol. Yeah, it's a hard problem.
Yeah, and so like I'm not trying to suggest that this is going to be the solution to everything, but it's, I think, a beginning because it invites discussions. And that's why we're trying to stick it with a very soft title, such as like a cooperative or a forum, because all validators should feel welcome to join and join in the discussion. And they don't even need to be a part. Maybe they just want to scream an opinion and just like get the hell out of there, which is perfectly fine as well. But we just want to start off a place where we could talk all together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that in the past, I know in Cosmos in the past, the reason this hasn't happened is people just yell collusion. Those validators, they're colluding. But we need to talk. Like, we need to have forums to discuss this stuff in the few large channels with a bunch of these folks that JK is talking about with Lido and these sort of staking people. Having a common forum for all of us to sort of express concerns and talk about best practices, I think it's a really good idea. Pylon Validator would join for sure. So I'm excited to hear a lot more about that, JK.
Yeah,
in the coming months. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys should definitely come join as well. We'd love to have you guys there.
Yeah. Oh, so before we wrap up here, is there any last things that you guys are working on or exciting stuff coming up from Stakefish?
Yeah, I think I really already shared, I think, the biggest one right now. But afterwards, on top of this, I'd say currently we have a few interesting products that are sort of still in stealth mode that like I can't really talk about too much, but it's going to be consistently around infrastructure, where we're just trying to provide some really nice open source tools, open source sort of concepts that people could use to further decentralize their validators. So be on the lookout definitely for that. But other than that, we'll be consistently supporting the various Cosmos SDK chains that are coming up as well. There's definitely already a few that's already in the pipeline, but primarily we're just we're just currently bottlenecked by our engineering capacity. Like we're looking for people to hire for DevOps such that we're able to support a lot more Cosmos chains, something we really want to do right now.
So that's interesting that you're saying decentralize their validators a little bit more. One open source project that I've been working on the side is a fork of the Polychain threshold signer. Have you seen that code at all?
Yeah. Yeah, we did looked at it, and I know that a few validators have actively used it, right, in their operations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm running it, but I'm working to put a bit better of a CLI around it right now to help, because like right now it's easy to shoot yourself in the foot with. During the last Cosmos Hub upgrade, and JK, I know you'll appreciate this, I was manually editing Priv Validator state files to make sure that I didn't double sign.
Oh my God.
Which, yeah, that was at like 9:30 at night. I was like, pretty sure I did that right, but like, am I really sure?
Yeah. So this is the part where we're really the more conservative ones, where we try not to touch the signing key too much, or just because it's a validator's worst nightmare. Nightmare.
Like literally nightmare. Yeah.
I definitely do have some nights where I do dream about getting alerts that we somehow double signed, and we actually had a false alert on this recently. And it was just all red alert, but it was just a false alarm. But yeah, that's the worst nightmare scenario for any validator.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, the threshold signer stuff is cool. I would encourage you guys to check that out, and happy to talk to you about it, but also happy to hear more about what you guys are working on. So I think that is the end of our time. And before we run, I do want to just say thank you again to our sponsors. Thank you to Sommelier.finance. Please go to Sommelier.finance and check out all of the very cool selections we have as to the hottest pools in Uniswap V2. We will soon have something similar for V3. I recently bought into a FTM ETH pool that's doing quite well. So go check it out. And the OmniFlix media team as well for producing this podcast. Thank you guys very much and really appreciate it. And finally, JK, thank you very much for taking the time this evening. I really appreciate you joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jack. It was really a lot of fun.
Awesome. Great.